Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again. I am Kaylee Batesman, the content director at She Can Code, and today we're going to be discussing skills challenges facing the data industry and how to tackle them. A recent report estimated that the data and business analytics industry will be worth around $274.3 billion by 2022. But with great power comes great responsibility, and the data industry is no stranger to its share of challenges. A lack of skilled professionals, data growth issues, and securing data are just a few of the problems the industry is facing. Thankfully, I have the fabulous Taylor McGrath, VP of Data Labs at Rivery, to delve into this topic with me today. Welcome, Taylor.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can we just set the scene a little bit with a little bit of background about yourself, if that's okay?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently the VP of Data Labs at Rivery. I grew up in a small state in the US called Connecticut, and kind of started my data career out of school as like a business intelligence analyst, doing a lot of like services work for companies where we were kind of doing end-to-end business intelligence projects. Stayed there for a number of years and started managing kind of end-to-end data projects all the way from like building a data warehouse to the ETL pipelines that kind of create data models to then the business intelligence, whether that's dashboards, reporting on top of the data sets. And then about 3 years ago, I joined Rivery, where I'm currently at now, and we are an ELT pipeline platform. So we're a SaaS technology. So basically went from like delivering the services to now working for like the product that kind of can make a lot of that much easier. So I started there, really actually very customer facing during our like customer success, sales engineering. So really kind of feeling, the pain that a lot of our prospects and customers were feeling. And then just recently, relocated to London, and taking up our data labs team, which is all of our like internal analytics, as well as working with like technical partnerships, other platforms that we can like integrate with Rivery, our product.
Can you tell us a little bit about Rivery and what it does?
Sure. So Rivery is a SaaS ELT platform, which basically means it is a tool for building data pipelines in the cloud. So what that covers is your data ingestion. So getting data from source systems such as business applications like a CRM, marketing platforms, operational data in a database, or data, in file formats, getting that into a data lake or data warehouse in the cloud, kind of start to build that centralized analytical source of truth for the rest of your downstream applications, such as like BI tools, reporting tools, to leverage, so that kind of everyone in the company, right, is kind of looking at data with the same definitions from the same place. So what Rivery covers is the getting of data into the warehouse, also the transforming of data in a data warehouse, and then also what is now called reverse ETL or data activation. So pushing data back out to source systems. The world is getting much more, we're combining more and more the analytical with the operational. So data activation is a very big topic currently. And then kind of the orchestration of all of that. So kind of building dependencies and saying, first I want this to happen, and then if this condition is met, run this process. So kind of being that kind of control panel for all of your data pipelines is Rivery. Right?
So when you joined, when you wanted to move into the data industry, was that something that you knew you wanted to do? Did you just sort of, think there's a need there, there'd be a really good opportunity for me? Or is that, did somebody kind of push you in that direction?
Good question. I absolutely not. I had no idea that I wanted to would love the data industry and end up there. I think, and I definitely can, touch on this further, like growing up and going through the classic kind of STEM classes and education, I think, and it's probably also in part because the data industry is relatively new. A lot of the roles that exist there are very new. This was just not something I was really aware of. In STEM, there's math, there's engineering, and so that's what I ended up going to school for, and just kind of assumed I would get a role in like a more physical engineering role. And kind of, when I was 22, I had to make a decision, like, do I go be a consultant in a city, or do I go move out to like Nebraska and work in like a plant and optimize the manufacturing flows there. So I chose a city, and really introduced me to that first role in like business intelligence, where really I was kind of building reports, building dashboards into like what the data industry was. And that was about 10 years ago. And I think even since then, it's evolved a crazy amount. So yeah, I really had no idea coming out of school. And I think part of that is just lack of awareness of kind of, where like academia, the education system is like, it's hard to keep up with how quick the data industry moves, to kind of align education there and what's possible to the actual roles that exist.
Because it's always so interesting to hear how people not only end up in technology, but how they end up in their particular roles. Because you're absolutely right, when you're at school, a lot of the roles in technology, they don't even exist yet. So it's always interesting to hear people's entry point into technology and how they made their way into disciplines such as the data industry. What role does data play in our lives today, do you think?
I think, a huge role. I think there's the area of like business, right, where data can play the role in terms of like driving decisions backed by data, like mapping certain data processes to business value. But I also think, like, when you break that down, you're analyzing data points, based on predictions or based on what happened in the past, making prediction based on what happened in the past, like that is a part of our day-to-day life. I think, even if it's like not something in an Excel spreadsheet or, a database necessarily, we're kind of curating all these like data points of what's happened to us in the past and making a decision based on, data that, may be very biased to us, but still is, different than just some gut feeling or some emotional decisions. So I think it's present all around, and where it applies to businesses, we actually have these data points like logged and can kind of curate what they actually mean.
Yeah, because I think in the industry today, we hear a lot about data and big data and careers in that area, but I don't think we always quite understand exactly what that entails, not just what a career looks like, but I suppose what big data is itself. It's something that we hear a lot, especially in the tech industry. But what exactly is big data?
Big data, I think, is very much, it's a big buzzword for sure. And definitely when I started out early in my career, it was like the buzzword about 10-ish years ago. And really, like, the tech definition is that businesses were seeing data with like greater, it's like, I think the 3 V's, they say: greater volume, greater variety, and greater velocity, right? So we were seeing things happening faster, getting into more near real time, bigger sizes of data, crazy sizes of data. And then variety, I think, is key too, where data is not just coming in very clean formats, with certain level of quality. It has to kind of be prepped, and it's coming in all different file formats or video formats or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of like, how, with all these things happening, how do we actually extract value out of these like big, fast, like varied data sets? But I do think, like, when the buzzword started, like, it was very early on in kind of the data world. And so you had things, when I first kind of joined the industry, we were kind of at the tail end of like the Hadoop realm and kind of these HDFS, like very on-prem systems. It was the start of like migrating things to the cloud, was kind of the beginning of the big data era. So I think really it's like we had all this kind of, data, not really knowing what to do with it, and the kind of early developments of tech that went along with it. But I think really it's just, to me, big data is like big aspirations, right? We just want to do big things with kind of all these crazy amounts and crazy types of like data points now at our fingertips.
Yeah, and I think that's the daunting thing. I think if you're not in the industry, you're probably thinking, as you mentioned, your job in data is to extract the value. Like you say, the way that it comes in, it's not clean. You have to have the skills to be able to extract that value from the data. And I think that's probably the thing that those of us on the outside are thinking, what kind of skills do I even need to have to go into a sector like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like at the root of it is some curiosity, some desire for problem solving. I think that's the biggest thing for me is kind of continually being curious and kind of asking the why. And then where I think that kind of moves from just being purely technical problem solving to value is when you can start to build skills to communicate and tell a story with some analysis that you did or your team did. Because that's where I think the real advancement in the data industry happens, is when you can kind of tie the technical to the value. So that's, I think a core piece of advice that probably I would tell myself as an early like analyst was, there's something to be said, sure, about technically doing your job well and solving for technical problems, but really the key is taking it to that next level where you can speak to how what you did just impacted, the bottom line of your company.
Yeah. And do you think the industry is facing skills challenges as well?
Oh, definitely. I think there's, demand is way outpacing supply, I'd say. And that's just because it's moving so quickly. And I think there's, endless kind of innovation happening. And I think, deficits in skills across the board. I say especially data leadership, just because it hasn't existed for that long. So there aren't, these tenured professionals that have kind of withered, 20, 25 years of data roles, because they really haven't existed, at least not in the way they do today, being very more, I guess, top down, where companies are actually saying, yes, like data needs to be a part of how we make decisions and how we build value. Just it hasn't existed for that long. It's kind of just been a very, in the world of let's make sure we can get, some static report to our shareholders. But yeah.
Yes, I agree, because the tech industry moves so fast. There's always been that challenge of, trying to link education with the workplace, which I know in technology is something that I've written about for years. I know they tried to change things in schools, and they tried to, make sure that children were more prepared for going into jobs in technology. But it is something, there's always going to be that gap, because as you mentioned, technology moves incredibly fast. Data roles are very new. By the time we actually figure that out, there'll be something new that comes along anyway. And a lot of our community are first and second jobbers. So I highly doubt that a lot of those were studying for data roles at school or at university anyway. So there's always going to be that skills challenge. I think once you're in the industry, if the industry is doing a good job to try and highlight the available opportunities that are there in the data industry, I think that's where people start to connect the dots there. But how else do you think we can address these types of challenges in the data industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on some of it. I think what's probably a less realistic goal is kind of going all the way down into early education programs, because like you said, it moves super fast. So by the time these things are initiated, it could be very different in the real world. But I do think we can go like kind of deeper down into entry level, grad level programs in terms of, mapping at least awareness of what's possible and how to kind of like jump maybe from one role to another, and then transparency around what it means for advancement too. Like, what are the possibilities after you're a data analyst, right? Like, what is next? What are all the other things kind of you can do to kind of progress and advance your career? So I think it's kind of that like mapping positions to different skill sets early on. And I do think a little bit what I said before is kind of earlier on in like the careers of data engineers, data analysts, like entry level data roles, let's say, to kind of show the significance, importance of mapping what you're doing to the actual business value. So I think for me, at least, that's something that took, I'd say, like years to really understand the importance of, just because it wasn't really, it's something I had to learn through like trial and error and experience of kind of how to communicate something you did, how to present something you did in a way that someone on the business side will actually care about. And I think that's a huge thing. Another thing for addressing these challenges is, I'd say, at least with my experience of like moving from role to role or company to company, I think your network is huge. That's something that I think there'll be kind of an investment of not only like talent education of entry level, but also the importance of building a network of professionals in kind of different areas that you may want to jump to. But
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You say about mapping your job to the business value, and I think that is something. Just communicating with how do you get more people into an industry if they don't quite understand the value that you can bring, not just to your business, but we talk to a lot of people that say, I didn't realize until I fell into tech the difference that I can make in people's lives every day, and the good that can be done with technology, and especially with data. I think that's a big thing that people don't quite understand, how you can change people's lives and solve real world problems. I think it probably isn't communicated very well within something like the data industry. You just think, I'm going to be sitting looking through lots and lots of raw data, none of it's going to make much sense, and it's not going to have much value or change for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of it, a lot of even I think content that you see of the data industry is very technology forward, very like tech driven. So you'll see like a lot about the new best of breed products to like solve all these data challenges. And I think maybe not enough focus about what that actually means for businesses, for value. And I think that's something that exists, across the board in the data industry. It's kind of focusing on like infrastructure and architecture and the how we're going to solve this instead of the why.
Yes, yeah. And we spoke a little bit about the challenges there, but what about the opportunities in the data industry? What kind of opportunities is the industry facing?
I mean, I think they're endless. I think there's so much innovation happening. There's so much demand for kind of data talent, which I think means only good things for, I think, the industry kind of becoming very diverse and open to kind of any sort of like data leadership from atypical backgrounds, upbringings, education paths. I think because it's such a net new industry of roles, there's really no set rules for like how you have to get here. So I think that's a real big positive in terms of opportunity.
Yeah. And I think we discussed this a little bit before about the challenges of getting people into the data industry and probably not quite realizing the opportunities available to them, or what a career in the industry would look like. We know across the board that companies are struggling to get females into technology anyway. But how do companies encourage more women into data, into the data industry and into data roles? is that something that you've seen yourself in your career, and how do we overcome that?
Yeah, I think proactivity. I think we have to, in terms of like, to actually kind of promote diversity, inclusion, like you have to be focused and proactive in terms of your, it starts with, kind of the HR recruiting, right? In terms of, we want to be proactive about the way that we hire people and that we grow our culture as a company. So I think proactivity, as well as like, communication and transparency for existing employees, and kind of what our values are, in terms of core values of a company. And then also like supporting managers and already existing leadership on those changes, on those values. So I think really it has to come from the top, and it has to be very like proactive and targeted that this is a goal.
Yeah. And once those ladies are in, I think you're absolutely right, being more targeted and proactive. And then once they're in, making sure that those ladies are visible and that they talk about their job and what it entails. And even on a level that I think some ladies I speak to, they think, my role actually isn't very inspiring. They probably can't see actually that their story and what it is that they do day to day is actually very extremely interesting to people looking to come into the industry. I think it's as important to be visible and to share your story with other females looking to come into that area of technology. Did you face any challenges coming in at all, or have you faced any challenges now you're in the sector, or now in a very male-dominated sector?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's definitely it's just the truth. It's very male-dominated, and I think as I've grown in my career, there's definitely points where you feel you kind of have to vouch for what you're doing, defend what you're doing, especially when you get to the point where you have to say this, this is the why of what I'm doing, in terms of, some data analysis or, some initiative, right? So I think ownership is very heavy, and that continues as you grow, for sure. And then, I think I've seen a change in a positive way in terms of it, it's still very male dominated, but I think there is proactivity. There is kind of, the efforts to kind of grow female data people in all levels of a company.
Yeah. And I hear it a lot from ladies that I speak to, that ladies in technology, and not just in technology, right across the board, always feel like they have to prove themselves a little bit more, and maybe to enter an industry, or even when they're in a role. Is that something that you found yourself in the area that you work?
Definitely, I think, and I don't know, if it's society imposed or some of it's maybe self-imposed, but I think I definitely feel, a heaviness to prove myself, I think, all the time, in terms of, especially when, like, advancing in roles. I think that only increases, in terms of, I need to prove myself, even more, because I haven't been here yet. And kind of that imposter syndrome of it all, I think is, it's something that I think, you can have things you do to minimize, but I don't think ever really goes away completely.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Imposter syndrome loves to seep in, doesn't it? Every company that we move to, it seeps in. For our listeners, if you wanted to move into a career in data, are there any skills that you would pick that stand out, that you think they should probably already have, or go off and try and learn themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, in terms of, I guess, non-technical skills, I would definitely say just kind of building that curiosity for learning, and kind of always wondering the why, because I think that is the easiest way to start tying what you're doing to business value, is kind of keep asking, okay, why are we doing this? Why is it actually important? and then you'll eventually get to the point of what the ROI is for whatever task you're on, or maybe there is none, and that's a good insight as well. So I think for non-technical skills, I would definitely say curiosity, communication is huge as well. For technical skills, at least in the data world, I think there are, the trend right now is a lot of technologies and products to make life easier, right? To do maybe things no code, low code. So I still think the fundamentals are very important, but I don't think you necessarily have to go as deep into the weeds in terms of certain languages, or unless it's a very specialized role, right, that you want to do. At least with my background, I started in business intelligence, which was very much just like dashboarding, reporting. So just understanding kind of the basics of data and data modeling, and what granularity means and things like that. But then getting kind of deeper into the data engineering side, and kind of learning, all the ins and outs of SQL and data warehousing. So I think, you can take it as deep as you want, but I think the fundamentals are key across the board, because we do have lots of products making our lives much easier. But even with those, it's not a perfect story. We still need to kind of understand the fundamentals of data modeling, governance, and analysis, et cetera. But
yeah, because I think from those of us that don't work in data, it sounds quite intimidating to think, to go into a discipline like that. But it's great that, to hear you say, actually, you don't have to be that technical to get started, and it is up to you about, how far you go into it. From the sounds of it, you really just need to be somebody that likes to solve problems, and that's really your starting point. And then, take it as far as you want. I think it sounds quite daunting as a career. But I think a lot of technology jobs actually sound quite daunting until you're in the sector, and then realize actually what it's about. We're nearly running out of time, so I'm going to ask you one last question about the future, if that's okay.
Sure.
What trends will we see in the data industry in 2023? We've already mentioned that it moves incredibly fast. So
definitely, I think so. I'll answer in two parts. First, I guess the technical trends. I think we have a lot of innovation happening. You'll see, endless, companies, whether, startups all the way to enterprises of kind of different technologies. I do think we'll see a large amount of consolidation this year, meaning kind of looking for tech that can do more than just one thing in the data world. Kind of the bundling of technologies, I'll say. And I'm hoping, and I think this is also kind of the reason why, is it'll lead to less focus on the infrastructure of it all and more on aligning data practices to business value from top down. In terms of the non-technologies, I would say to that same realm of mapping, and kind of, I think, the theme of a lot of what we talked about today, mapping what you're doing in the data world to what it actually means for a business, is kind of that spread of data literacy across all parts of the business, and understanding that, yes, these are things like, we have coders and engineers kind of doing, in a back room and they're on their computer, but this is what it actually means for us revenue wise, or, something in terms of business value. And with that, I think there has to be, investments in talent education, whether that's content like this, YouTube, LinkedIn, et cetera. So I think it's very easy to like spread knowledge now. So I do think there'll just be increased content in that realm, and increased opportunities, in a positive way to like learn about the data industry and get into it if that's the desire.
Yeah. And in terms of, obviously, we discussed that things move incredibly fast. And as you mentioned there, the industry is due to change a lot. in 2023. How do you see your role already at Rivery, changing and from what you do now to, where you see things going in the future, and, what Rivery plan to do with data next year and beyond?
I've been lucky enough with Rivery to kind of, move all around the company. So like I said, it started with like the customer facing type roles, and now doing or leading our data team. So we're a small team of data people currently. So I think our, the goals for next year, the predictions for next year are a bit of growth, but that also means kind of grappling with, how you scale a data team. If you have more than just a couple analysts, what that means in terms of how do we prioritize tasks, how do we continue to map what we're doing, improve the results of what we're doing, and kind of have that ownership as data team, which is usually considered a cost center of sorts, prove that the ROI of what we're doing. So I think it's going to be questions of scale and also of ROI is what's on my radar for this year.
Fabulous. Okay, well, we are out of time. It flies by when we're talking about something incredibly interesting. And thank you so much. Our community is really going to find that very useful, whether they're already in the data world or they're looking to move into a career into it. So thank you so much, Taylor, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me so much.
Thank you. And for everybody, as always, thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.